this computer. Okay. Hey, Cole.
What's up, dude?
All right. So, welcome back to the Outskirts podcast with Tanner and
Thank
friends.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Cole, you and I, we're good buddies. We go back about 20 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably so. It's actually what 90 what year did you move to Monroe? Do you remember?
It was kind of back and forth for a couple of years. I guess about 98 to 2000 maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, 98 because I mean, I started working at Charlie T's where we met my junior year, or I guess my senior year of high school, and then it just translated into college. So I think we probably met once I started college, probably.
Yeah. Uh so you're my first guest. We're going to introduce this new format on the Outskirts podcast. I don't know what I'm going to title it yet, but it's basically just an unedited, unproduced chit chat. And the focus of this talk that we're going to have is going to be curses. Um, we were talking on the phone yesterday,
Yeah.
and I don't even remember why I called you to begin with, or did you call me? But yeah, it came around to the subject of curses. So we in my house we've had this like murder flu, I'm calling it, just like stomach pains, like started with my daughter and
That's the worst.
it lasted way too long. She was barfing everywhere. And then like we were like, okay, finally it's passed. And then it like came back on her, And I was like,
Mhm.
damn, what the hell is this? And then she started to make some progress. And then my wife and oldest son both came down with it simultaneously. And it's
Oh,
like, you know what? This isn't right. I don't recall viruses behaving this way, like stomach viruses. I think
yeah,
this
as a
has to be a
kid.
curse. Like when you're suffering especially as a parent, you're just like, it's so intolerable. It's excruciating when your kids are just like, in pain and
Oh no, and there's nothing you can do, and
yeah,
yeah, it's a deep feeling of helplessness. It's like they want you to fix it because that's
yeah,
what you do, and you're just like, I'm
yeah,
sorry, buddy.
yeah.
I wish I could,
My
and
son's
it
like,
kills you. It kills you.
why isn't God answering my prayer? Like, I want this to stop. It's like, I know. I really have no answer for
Yeah, and
that. I
I'm
don't know.
praying too, buddy. Yeah.
But it's like I really sympathize with our our ancestors who would have chalked this up to a curse. It's like
Oh yeah.
there's that one family
Who
in the church or in the
who did
neighborhood, like this, yeah. Like someone has to be this is like there's some ill will behind this,
Yeah.
this evil that's plagued my home. That got me thinking on the subject of curses. And we were
Mhm.
talking, and you said, dude, I think I asked you. Oh, I remember now. We were talking about my interview with Jerry Marzinski,
Yeah. Yeah.
the psychologist. And yeah, so we're gonna have a little bit of this. There's no stopping it. Or I'm gonna be done after you're asleep, hopefully. Okay? Go lay down. Love you. Yeah. So, um,
So you were you done your interview, and we were talking about that interview.
yeah, I was getting some feedback from you.
Yeah.
And just we were talking basically the questions there are the role of free will and the ability of any supernatural forces to interfere and impede on that free will. It's
Mhm.
kind of what that discussion boils down to. And in the context of mental illness in that case. But here it applies also, like this notion of a curse from without, right? Like someone else's ability to
Mhm.
physically impact you or otherwise through their will and maybe through the summoning of some kind of spiritual force or
Yeah.
entity. Yeah, and we were talking
Which
about
just
that, and you
yeah,
and
which
you
just seems just so out of our modern context.
well, that and out of my religious context as well. It's like, well, I don't have to, there's no peace of mind for somebody who has to go around worrying about pissing off their neighbor for sake of being cursed, right? Um,
Yeah.
I don't have a
Yeah.
place. I don't have a place for it. I don't like it. I hate
Yeah.
it. But it is a huge part of many cultures,
Hmm.
even like today, um, particularly like European pagan influenced cultures. Like,
And
uh,
also, there's what in Central and South America.
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
There's a lot. There's a lot there because of people tending to go to third party,
brujeria.
um,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, third party
yeah,
providers for
yeah,
answers and stuff. So they kind of open themselves up to you know
yeah.
mm,
So
things.
yeah, thinking about like the narco, like the El Salvadorian MS-13 guys who have the cauldron, right? And they're sacrificing humans to their demon god in order for what to happen exactly.
Yeah,
Whatever, however it's manifesting, it's doing so in a way that they think it's like worth continuing, I guess.
yeah.
So horrifying.
I think one
What
thing
influence?
we can talk about, um, just kind of based on what I look at is even starting on the most basic level of like curses. Because I even told my son, I was like, I've got to record with Tanner. We're doing a podcast. So what's it on? I was like, curses. He was like, so bad words, and I'm like, eh, sort of, kind of, but yeah, not really. But is like the idea of cursing, because especially in the South, you know, it's we talk about curse words. Curse words are everything. That's just the words you're not supposed to say, right?
Yeah, certain words became taboo, and the
Yeah,
reason being varies from word to word, right?
yeah. Well, you have the. I read the book. It's called
Just let the people
Holy.
know. Let the people know that you're an English professor.
Well, I have a master's in American literature, and I have a fondness for the origin of words, origin of names, meaning of names.
So we can
Um,
forgive you for steering us in this direction.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, like, there's a book. It's called Holy, Shit, a brief history of cursing.
Let me sound that out. Shit. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And it breaks it down. It's a really short book. It's a great read. But you have two types of curse words. You have the taboo, and then you have the curses. The taboo deal with bodily functions. So all those words that deal with the body are the taboo, and then you have the curses, which because we have this idea of God. In the Bible it says don't curse and stuff like that. And I remember as a kid it was like, oh, I'm not supposed to say bad words. And they're like, well, no, that's not quite it. In reality, it kind of is too, because you're not supposed to say GD, because if you're doing that, you are wishing someone to be damned for God to put them in hell.
Right.
Or, um, and it goes back through history. Is like, one early example was people would say on God's bones. And that doesn't sound kind of weird or bad, but the problem with
It
that
sounds
is that,
weird. No, it's quite weird. I'm pretty sure God is doesn't have like some bones laying around that we can put things on.
well, it's reducing God, who is the Almighty and above, and to reduce God to a figure that actually has bones and is
Blasphemous.
minimizing. Yes, blasphemous. It's just minimizing God to something that is like a human, which is ridiculous. And
Except for
um,
Jesus. There's the
yeah,
Jesus
yeah,
thing.
sure, but it's still just kind of obscene to think of God, Almighty God, as having bones, because it doesn't. you know,
That's hard to
into
know. I don't know. Supposedly we're made in his image, right?
spiritual image, I would think.
I don't know. When Jesus was resurrected
But you're
and
bringing the
body.
Trinity into this, which is a little different. It's separate.
Anyway, on God's bones. That's a blasphemous curse.
Yes. So it's
Is it a
speaking
curse or is it just a swear? Like the Bible
that
says,
would be a curse. That'd still be a curse because you're speaking of God.
okay. But it's not something you can project onto someone else. Like you, you're gonna lose your sheep tonight on God's bones. Is that how? Would that be how it would be used
That would probably be an accurate,
on
yeah,
God's bone?
use.
I would think it would be more of like a swear. Like I swear on God's bones that I will be here at 10 a.m. with a
Hmm.
bucket of goat's milk.
Maybe,
Yeah, I'm going with that.
but yeah, goat's milk is always a safe bet.
So yeah, curse words and cursing, right? Like,
Yeah,
God damn you. That's wishing God to act
the
on your
Almighty
behalf. Yeah.
on your behalf to send you to hell, which
Yeah.
is pretty.
Right.
That's pretty bad.
That's
Yeah,
pretty intense if you believe such thing can actually happen. Like here's
yeah,
some from here's
or
some
even to ask God to do that. That's kind of ridiculous.
read the Psalms. David asked for some pretty raunchy things to be done to his enemy.
Well, okay, but yeah. I think he was justified though. He was one of the chosen, so he gets to petition God in that manner. I mean, like God, I need some help. I need you to. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I sometimes get uncomfortable. I read the Psalms and I pray them as prayers, and there's certain ones that I'm like, I think I'm gonna one up you there, David. Yeah, I think I'm gonna skip that. I've got
yeah.
enemies, I assume, different times in my life. And just like actually the extension I make, I've worked through this. And we need to get off. We're getting way off subject here, but
All right, yeah,
so I was reading Lewis's on the Psalms, right? He wrote a book on C.S. Lewis wrote a book
yeah.
on the Psalms. It's
I
basically
haven't
like
read it, but
it's like
yeah.
an apology for the Psalms. And I found it really just it didn't resonate with me because I think he was missing something. He felt the need to apologize for all those curses David was hurling. And I as just as David was sort of like a foreshadowing of Christ, in a way, people talk about him that way. Um, he's like another Adam or whatever, flawed. And obviously Jesus was the perfection. He was the cured version of David, right? Um,
Sure, I'm with you. I got something to add here in a second. Yeah,
so I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So David in his brokenness wishes death and his enemies to be smited and their children to be smashed
Sure.
against the stones, right? Um, and Jesus came and he modeled something else. And he spoke about our enemies not as flesh and blood, but as what? You know, principalities and rulers of the air, unseen forces.
Hmm.
Um, so spiritual. Our battle is against spiritual realities and
Yeah.
spiritual beings. So like when I pray those or when I see those, I just kind of feel like in the hindsight of Jesus, I know to apply the word enemy to sort of the demonic realm.
That's a nice. I like that. I like that a lot. I feel that the Psalms and David is really a very human moment. You know, that's David being raw, whether for right or for wrong. He had desires and needs, and he begged God begged God to help him. You know, um, whether it was against his enemies or anything else. A lot of the Psalms to me, at least, the ones that kind of resonate or just kind of I'm thinking of, it's just him being just like begging God, please, God, do something for me. Please help me with these problems I'm having. And for David, it was his enemies. Please smite, or smite my enemies. I mean, they're at the gate. You know, help me. And I think it's more of to me in my mind it's just kind of it's a reflection of a human relationship with God. And are we always right in what we ask? No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So
That's echoing my thoughts there. So yeah, David is us, and Jesus is
yeah.
who we aspire to be.
Yeah.
We relate to David, and Jesus even found it good to pray David's prayer from the cross, right? Why have you forsaken me? Because
Sure.
he knew, like we're gonna feel forsaken, and in our moments, and many of us throughout history since Jesus have died horrible deaths and probably felt forsaken
Mhm.
in the moment, but that we can grab onto that and be like, well, Jesus also felt pretty rotten. Like, but they're still like the world's broken. They're suffering. Uh,
Yeah.
there are curses, and like, but our hope is, you know, in 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 spirit, like in the kingdom that he talked about, not of this world.
Mhm.
So, in the same way that we transcend, that we hope to transcend life, and we assign a sort of transcendental meaning to what we value, right? We don't store up treasures on earth, we store up treasures in heaven. In the same way, when we look at the Psalms, we can assign a sort of uh, spiritual meaning to those enemies, or even, not even like I think probably a literal stand-in. And it's not even clear. David never actually names any group of peoples, right?
Mhm.
He may very well have been talking about spiritual enemies,
It's
that
true.
were having real effects in his world. That's probably a stretch, but um, anyway, back to curses. Yeah,
Curses.
yeah.
Curses are
A
are
plague
a
on both your
word.
houses,
A plague.
Mercutio.
Yes.
Okay.
A nice tie-in. Yes. So a curse.
We were
Wanting
talking about
ill.
curses.
So what sort of do you have any experiences? We've talked about some of mine, and I'll recount those in a second. But
As far as I know, I've not been the victim of any curse. I've felt like I've been a victim of a curse. I struggled for 2 years with really unimaginable physical ailment. That was just the worst. It's the worst. I couldn't even imagine. I
oh,
could
I
not.
know.
I could not have imagined a worse way to spend 2 years. Um, but even in the depths of that despair, it never occurred to me that I'm cursed, you know. Even though it came seemingly from nowhere. And even in hindsight of the medical procedure I had, which revealed it wasn't even the same the same disease that other people in my family have struggled with. So it's not necessarily even a genetic link, maybe. I don't know.
Hmm.
It's just something bad that happened to me. And but yeah, this virus that's been sweeping through my house, it's felt like a curse.
Yeah.
But that's just, I have 3 kids now, and I have no patience. I'm just always spent. I'm always running on fumes. I don't have, like, it takes patience to endure suffering. And
And how old are you?
I'm 45. Is that
Yes.
related? Is that related somehow?
Not.
Yeah. See, you're supposed to become older and wiser, right? And implicit in
Well,
wisdom is patience, but
I
that's
think,
not been my
listen,
experience.
no. It is your experience. Imagine us at 21, 22, 23, rolling down the road. Are we wiser and better than we were then?
But yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Wiser,
Yeah, a lot,
wiser.
I would,
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot, I would suggest.
Yeah, that's probably safe to say. Well, there's been a regression. Okay. I'm not at my wisest. I'll say that. I'll say you know, I'm just tired. I'm tired and I feel cursed.
Yeah.
And it had me thinking, which one of these goddamn neighbors has done this shit to me, right?
I mean, who have you pissed off?
Who have I pissed off? Like I left the
I
trash
mean, are
can
you
out.
sure that you didn't like when you mowed the grass, that you didn't like throw clippings?
Well, like there's the guy I make fun of his edges, because he goes a little he's pretty intense with his edging. I make wisecracks here and there. And then there's the other guy. Yeah, there's some conflicts here and there, but it's all just like in good fun as far as I'm concerned. But you never
Yeah, but
know. You never
you
know
never
who you're
know what
pissing
other
off.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Then there's the guy with the Freemason license plate, you know. I don't know what kind of magician he is, right?
possible.
uh you just don't know. What do you think? Yeah. And then and then you shared with me yesterday, well, I have a story about a curse. You want to hear a curse story?
Hmm.
And you dropped my jaw.
Yeah. So, um, basically, my my mom's older sister. She had two older sisters, one younger sister. The one older than her, when she was going through her divorce, mom was on the tail end of her divorce, and she came and lived with us um, for a while. And at some point, you know, my mom was kind of bitter over the divorce from my dad because after they had split, um, my eventual stepmother kind of moved in and you know created a relationship with my dad, and my mom felt that my stepmom, while maybe not have been not might not have been the root cause of the divorce, was basically blocking any chance of resolving things. So my mom was very, 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 very bitter. And my aunt knew this. And my aunt was kind of into occultish things, um,
Define that a little more.
tarot cards mostly. She had a deck. Um, and she also kind of introduced me. I was about 10, or well, I was probably more like 12, 13 years old, and she introduced me to tarot cards, bought me a deck just like hers, and kind of got me into it for a while. And
She get you into the Ouija board also?
no, no. But a weird thing, and we didn't talk about this um, yesterday. So when my aunt was trying to get me into, or was kind of introducing me to tarot, it's a 52 card deck, and it has a major, minor, and all the hanging man and five of cups and all these things. And that my mom and my aunt were sitting in what used to be my brother's room. Um, and she had the cards laid out, and she's kind of sprayed them all, like a blind deal where you like spread them all out. And she said, Cole, pick a card. And I just went in and picked a card, and my mom was like beside herself when I picked up that card. That was the exact same card my aunt had picked out and said I was going to pick out, or just like she was like, here's a card. Cole's going to find it. And I picked the exact card. And my mother was like beside herself. So I knew it was true. Like you can't hide, true, like shock and surprise. And it was my aunt trying to prove to my mother that I had the gift.
One of my first memories of you was in my girlfriend's dorm room. Remember? I'll just say her
No.
first name,
Who?
Jennifer. Her first name was Jennifer. Don't say her last name if you remember it, but and Tosh, and
I remember Tosh.
you came in with your deck of tarot cards and gave them a
Really?
reading. Yeah. And I was just like, what the fuck?
I'm surprised you stayed friends with me after that.
I was pretty much game for anything, but
Yeah.
it just came out of nowhere, and I didn't really know what to make of it. It was bizarre. And yeah, you kind of played up that clairvoyant angle pretty well back then. So continue. Anyway, that's just so that's the origin story of that. I never heard that.
Yeah.
That's how you became a card reader. Okay,
Yeah.
go on.
So then, because of going back to my mother's discontent and anger and hatred for my stepmother, my aunt put a curse on my stepmother. And I remember my mother telling me, Alana has put a curse on Diane. And, um, okay, apparently made it just seem like official, like it had been done. And then
You remember how she told you, when she told you, and what your response
I,
was?
I was like, oh, okay. I just didn't think anything of it. At that point, I was kind of, you know, conditioned to hate my stepmother. So that it didn't strike me as odd or weird. And I'm like, okay, the hell with the bitch, you know, because that was kind of how I was conditioned
But were
at
you
that point.
conditioned to believe in curses yet?
No, I don't think so. No, but I didn't. But it wasn't without. I didn't. Okay, it's possible. I was very open. 12, 13 years old, just whatever you tell me. Okay, kind of scenario. And within the next 2 years, um, I was checked out of school by my dad's best friend, which was odd. And he checks me out, and
What was his name?
buckshot,
Yeah. Don't leave that
buckshot,
out. Don't leave
yeah,
that out, Cole.
yeah, buckshot comes and checks me out of school, which I've known buckshot all my life, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? Get in the truck with him, and he looks at me very seriously, and he says, look, Cole, you know, uh, there was a Diane's mother, and sister. There was a house fire. Their house burned down. I'm like, okay, are they okay? He says, Cole, they died. I'm like, okay. And I was still at that point kind of, emotionally distant from Diane. And I was like, why am I getting checked out of school for this? I mean, I could have been told this after school and it would have been just, yeah, okay, we go to the funeral, we do all that sort of stuff. Um, and basically, what had happened, what they had figured out is that they both smoked and just the comforter caught on fire and the house caught and they both died. And so fast forward, I was in high school, early in high school, probably a freshman because I wasn't driving yet. Fast forward to my senior year of college. And well, before that, something else had happened. So my grandmother, my mom's mom, she had been a widow for like 30 years from my grandfather passing away in 1975 all the way basically into the 90s. She'd been single, she'd been a widow, and she remarried in her 70s to a guy who was basically the restaurant, the big restaurant owner of the barbecue joint around in East Texas where they lived. And so we had Roy, and she married Roy, and they'd been married about, few years, three years or so. And he was driving, and it had been raining, and there was a wash in the road where there was water, and he tried to drive his vehicle through it, and his vehicle got just whooshed off the road and into the creek or canal or whatever it was, and he drowned. And so that was obviously very tragic. And then fast forward a few more years to 2003. It was in February. Actually, it was the same day that uh, the space shuttle blew up in 2003. Not Challenger, but the next one. Remember, they took off and it split and it blew up, and some parts landed in Texas.
Landed all over Texas. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Okay, it was the same day that happened. So it was February, and actually we had an unusually warm day in February, and my grandmother decided to take her great nieces and nephew to the catfish pond to fish, and one of the littlest girls fell in. And the thing about this pond, the way it was designed, it was almost sheer cliffs all the way around. It wasn't a gradual thing. So if you fell in the pond, you were suddenly treading water or needed to, and she couldn't swim. And so her sister jumped in to try to get her. But we know when somebody's can't swim and they're flailing, you can't rescue them. And then the boy jumps in, the oldest jumps in to try to get them. He can't get them up, and so he comes back up, and my grandmother tells him, go run for help. And the last thing he remembers, he turns around and he sees my grandmother going in to the pond to try to help them. And my grandmother can't swim. Never could. She never learned to swim. And by the time EMS arrived, all three of them had drowned. So, in my mind, this is just my personal opinion, the Bible speaks about the dangers of cursing someone, and that if you curse someone, it'll come back, sevenfold, or it'll come back on you. It warrants you. I mean, I don't remember where it is, and I wish I would have looked it up before we started. But I mean, there's a warning. Don't curse. Don't curse people. It will come back on you sevenfold. And I feel that because of my aunt cursing my stepmother, and that her mother and sister dying in a fire, that my grandmother, her husband, and two little girls died by drowning. And I feel that it came back on us.
Did your aunt feel that way?
I don't know. We never discussed it. And
Really?
I couldn't have brought it up to her. It was too tender. It was too I could never. She would have. I mean, could you imagine if you felt like if I brought up the topic that you were responsible for your mother's death because of something you did?
Yeah.
You couldn't deal with that, and it would be wrong for me to bring that up to you.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a popular idea in those circles. And I've heard it discussed, numerous times in the context of witchcraft where the curse comes back on you. I was looking here for some biblical reference. I remember Jesus said, bless those who curse you. But
Yeah.
as far as it coming back on you, that sounds like an Old Testament idea.
Oh, it is. It is. It is.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't see anything specifically except someone loved to pronounce a curse. May it come back on him. That's
Hold,
probably David again.
let me grab.
Anyway, that's um we don't need to do a Bible lesson on cursing. But it is interesting to talk about within the context of what the cursor believes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so your mom, you never discussed it with your mom either.
I think I may have at some point with mom.
Do you think your mom believed that what had
Yeah,
happened to your stepmother's family was a result of her sister's curse?
yeah, I believe so.
And what about you? I mean, do you
Oh, wholeheartedly.
really?
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to think what
See,
would be who aside from like modern day TikTok witches and stuff like that, who is still doing this kind of stuff? Like obviously your aunt, maybe like certain
I think what
Amish, don't the Amish have like a space for this? Or I've seen documentaries about like
not
Amish
that I'm
witchcraft.
aware of. I mean, I think well, here's the deal is that I mean, in the United States, I think we're moving so far away from, church in biblical sense, um, that I think it's more happening in, as I said, like, in South America, Central America, and then in more of these third world countries.
Well,
I mean, one,
as we become more multicultural as a country, like especially where I live now, um,
yeah,
you walking through Target and it's not be careful who you bump into, you know,
yeah,
because there's people from all walks of life and from all parts of the world. But there again, my belief system, my worldview doesn't allow for me to be a victim of a curse, you know? It just it's like I was reading in this article. Did you read that article I sent you about the Irish
I
origins?
I got I only was able to skim it, but it was like I did get a sense that they're just it's a it's something that they just do.
Well, they
It's a
believe,
cultural thing.
yeah, it's cultural. It's a cultural thing, but also has like they made an art form out of it. It talks about that, but it also doesn't. They weren't embarrassed about their belief and
Mm-hmm.
and and
Oh yeah,
and the practical application of the curse. They're like, may your cow choke to death on its own vomit.
yeah, on
They
its
would
own
get
cud.
specific, yeah, they would get specific, and they meant it, right? And
Yeah, may
they have certain like.
your cow choke on its own cud.
I wonder if I share this screen, will it show up in the video? Let me see. My sound effects. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So that's St. Bridget's Stone. St. Bridget's Stone, Black Lion County, Cavan, used for cursing and blessing. It's just this boulder with smaller, larger rocks on there. I'm assuming like each rock represents somebody's curse. I don't know. You ever
I mean, they
been?
definitely have a lot to do with like stones and.
Yeah. Have you ever seen just like a neatly stacked tower of rocks in a creek bed?
No, not really.
I That's something
I
that
mean,
I
I
see
know they
pretty
do. I
often.
know they do exist.
I don't know what they mean. I just when Haley, my wife and I, we lived in Maryland for a while.
Oh, I forgot
Uh,
about that.
Yeah, we lived in the witchiest town. It's called Ellicott
Really?
City.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
Oh
remember that
man.
now. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we lived in a haunted house too, or an apartment. But
Did you have any kids at that point?
no. That was before we were married, actually. Yeah, that was 2008. Um, but there was a river that runs through that, and let's see, what is it? It's like the oldest railroad station in the country, right there too.
Yeah.
Um, can't remember the name of the river, Patapsco River. But you would always, and there were like these fairy shops and witch wizard stores, and it all just had this real artsy kind of fun vibe. But there was also some sincerity to it, that was just weird. Have you ever experienced that? Like, you ever been in a place that was witchy and more than just kind of fun, cute, artsy witchy? It was like they actually believed in what they were doing, maybe.
I mean, I guess by chance, but not.
Like, think New Orleans.
Well, that's what I'm
Um,
saying. But so much of
yeah.
that is just it's just fake. It's just they
Yeah,
do it
it's
for the
that's for
sake of the.
tourism. Yeah.
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 Look,
But then go
I'm gonna
ahead.
have to like I have a topical Bible.
Okay.
So I looked up curses, but I'm gonna have to do a little. We'll have to get back on this because there's a lot of it. The one thing that I did just happen on was just Luke, and I mean I don't have time to go through every single little thing, but it was like Luke 6:28, and it's just a warning. I think if some bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. Is that basically what you said? But
It is. Yeah.
that's
That's fine.
that's all I got.
That was Jesus speaking.
It was in
Yeah.
red.
So yeah, that's a better approach than to like this reactionary, like, who cursed me? Ah, I curse you back. You son of a bitch. Yeah, you
Mhm.
cursed me, I curse you twice. You know,
Yeah,
that's kind of the vibe you get when as I was reading this article, which is actually pretty great on the way that cursing was practiced in the Gaelic communities.
yeah.
Even so much so that it was such a normal part of their everyday life that it kind of desensitized them as a culture to
Oh yeah,
the
I
witch
believe.
trials. So like while the witch trials were kind of raging across Europe, it didn't really affect them. Like even in Scotland, they were holding people accountable and burning people at the stake and stuff. But in Ireland, they were just like, ah,
Go away.
that's just horse shit. You curse me,
Yeah,
fuck yeah, I curse you back, right?
yeah,
Like it's they were desensitized to it, and it became a part of their
yeah.
culture, and it was like an art form. It pretty interesting. But you wonder, like, did bad things
Did
happen to people because of these
did that?
curses?
I mean, that's exactly. I'm kind of with you. It's like, did that help them or did
Yeah.
it hurt them? I mean, like, you can't run around and be like, you know, I hope your dog breaks its leg. You know,
Yeah.
I curse your dog. I hope it breaks its leg. Because your dog is a valuable part of your family. It's protection. It's work. It does its jobs. It has a
You
job.
don't want to spend your life trading curses. It's
Yeah,
a constant battle. You don't want to be locked in
but
that,
it's like,
except that they
but it's
seem
like,
to
okay, but
enjoy it.
what is? But okay, so here's the question: what does Satan do? Are these things done in sincerity, or are they done as just flip of the tongue? And if they're done as flip of the tongue and not really meant to be true, I hope your dog dies.
Well, it's about the heart, right?
Then
Yeah. If you pronounce a
if the
curse,
heart is not there,
yeah.
then does Satan not? Because I mean, and again, it kind of goes back to me being like a word nerd, and I definitely believe in the power of words, and like words. Me personally, this is just me. Words have power. Words have power. You got to be careful with words. You got to be careful with naming. I looked up my
Right.
son's
All right.
name.
Well, okay.
Before we named
All right.
him.
They have artistic power and they have symbolic power. The question is, well, let's not get distracted. Do they have practical power as far as supernatural effects, right? So you were asking
Yeah,
about the
I
devil.
do.
Does the devil does the devil exist? Do demons exist, right? So if a curse if a curse is going to be enacted, right? It's not going to be enacted based on the magical powers of the sounds, the vibrations, right? Coming out of your mouth, right?
Mm-mm.
It's going to be because that is taken up as marching orders by some unseen entity, and they're going to
And
act.
if that happens, you owe there's a price. There's a price.
If it well,
Things are not done for things are not done for free.
now we're getting into the legality of it as if it actually happens, right? So you
But
take
on the demonic, it's all legality.
right, but
They
is it
they
even
they
real?
function upon
You're
legality.
skipping ahead. Okay, is it even real? Is it even real? Was it real to the Irish in the 1800s all the way through the mid 1900s, even maybe today?
I
There was
feel
did,
I feel I feel that because it's flippant and not meant with sincerity. It's more of you know you
wait,
know hey hey
let me
Tanner,
suggest
you
this.
you stupid son of a bitch, how you doing? It's like how guys
No, 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 no,
disrespect
no,
each
no.
other.
That's not cursing. I'm talking about the ill will. Like you still say that, fuck you, right? And what's in your heart is like you're dehumanizing that person. That's
If I
hatred.
mean it,
No,
but
you mean
most of
it.
the
No,
time
we're not
when
we're
those
not talking
words,
no, 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 no. We're not talking about barroom camaraderie. We're talking about
okay.
ill will here, okay?
Oh,
We
so
don't
like
need to
truly.
we don't need to provide this other nuance.
But
We're
I think
talking
it's
about ill
important
will.
talking about the
No,
Irish.
no, let's talk about ill will. In the
Okay.
context of ill will. Let's throw out the barroom antics.
Okay.
Ill will. Sincerity of heart, right? So if you are hating somebody sincerely in your heart and you're cursing them, right? Like a plague on your house. I hope you die. I hope you die. Right?
Hmm.
Will you die? Like that's ill will. That's the damage has already been done, right? If there's a devil and if there are demons, they're pleased with that result. There's no need for them to act on your behalf because they don't care who is compromised. They're happy when you're hating your neighbor because
True.
that why would they don't have to do anything for you. They only would oblige if it served a higher purpose, a greater
Yeah.
purpose in order to
For them.
for them, right? So it's like I think maybe you could look at that and say, well, perhaps that definitely plays a role in the waning of the use of curses as practical as a means of practically harming those around you, right? Because uh you know, maybe it's less practical for the demonic to actually carry out these things. And maybe they don't have freedom to do so and in
I don't know.
most circumstances.
I'm still going back. I mean, I'm still going back in my head to the power of words. And I don't mean to get, you know, I just, I think back to in the beginning, there was the word.
God's word, okay? Not your
But
word.
it isn't, but it's the power of words.
Well, yeah,
It's the
okay. So
power of words.
Jesus defined himself as the word, right? So we aren't him.
No,
Yep.
but here's the deal. But I get that. But I'm saying that even though it's like, think about the power of singing. The power of like singing and what that does to people, and that how even Satan was in charge of music. And he was the music and the singing person. He was in charge of music in heaven and the power of music and the power of these things. I think as it is in heaven, I think a lot of these laws still apply here, and that if since singing has such a powerful presence in heaven, is the reason why it has such a powerful presence here, and that if words matter there, then words matter here.
Yeah, they matter. That's how we communicate. But do they have supernatural ability to physically and alter other people's environments, other people's circumstances?
Can you petition God in prayer?
You can, and you're encouraged to petition
Can
for
someone
his
not?
will.
But if Satan is over earth, could one not petition Satan or his demons?
Yeah, well, now you're speaking my end of the argument again. Yeah, the petitioning of the third party to do the work. It's not the word itself that has any effect.
Okay, fair enough. I'm with you.
Yeah, words are beautiful and symbolic and language and uh, yeah, words are great, but they don't have any magical power in and of themselves. Yeah.
No, but I think, but just the idea. Okay, we're coming from it from two different angles.
Except that in this case, I would argue the only time that that's not true, what I just said, is that the words you speak can harm yourself, right?
Mhm.
Jesus said, it's not what goes in the mouth that harms a man, but what comes out of the mouth that harms him. So, in pronouncing curses on others, we harm ourselves.
Yeah,
But sometimes do the demons just do it anyway?
but that gets us into the discussion that we had about just living in a world of sin, and that we are subject to a sinful world, and bad things are going to happen outside of our control. You went through some really gnarly stuff for any particular reason? No, but we just live in an imperfect world with imperfect bodies, and things are going to happen.
I wouldn't
You know,
say it's not for any reason. That's yeah.
no, I don't mean no.
That's
I'm not
God's.
saying that you did. No, no, I don't. I'm not saying. I just mean it's not because you did something that happened to you. I'm
Oh,
saying
right. Yeah. Yeah.
that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. That's God's magic is he's able to take the brokenness, take our mistakes, take the shit and like turn it into something good,
Oh yeah,
worth preserving or
every day.
yeah. Yeah. It's much less intrusive in that way. We're much more participant and that requires wisdom and patience and all that stuff. Um, whereas the devil, he's much more obliging, it seems to be, when you want that supernatural hair-raising event, you know?
And it doesn't even have to be that. It just has to be a desire. He's going to oblige the desire.
Unless he already has you, right?
Yeah, but he's going to keep you. But just like the rat that keeps going back
Yeah.
to the laced water, he's going to continue to supply you with the laced water, so you go back to it
Yeah. Yeah.
because
It's
he
this
got you.
balancing act. Yeah, he's limited resources. He's not omnipotent
Mm-mm.
like God or omniscient. He doesn't know everything and he can't be everywhere at once. You know, it's interesting when you think about how he has to allocate his resources and time and his minions. There's a hierarchy. This is the way most people talk about the demonic realm.
Yeah,
Like Lewis's screw tape letters. I think that's I couldn't imagine it any more effectively than that. Where Satan is the general.
but that actually gets me back to um what the podcast, the Exorcist Files,
Uh,
where he encounters the same demon that he believes had encountered. He's just like he's dealing. It was like a moment of realization. He was like, when one of the demons had named himself, and he's like, this is the same demon that has been plaguing people for 300, 500, 1,000 years. And he's like, he's still doing what he's doing. And
Yeah,
I think it had to be like one of the demons that like it possibly had murdered someone in history, or so I don't know. But
Nero. Yeah,
it wasn't even, it was like, it was actually, it wasn't Aquinas, but it was something. I don't know. It was him just talking about how, this is, oh no, the demon admitted, oh, I know what it was. He was talking about how the mentioning of certain saints' names caused pain to certain demons. And you can mention one saint and not be a problem, but if you mention a particular saint, it causes great distress to that demon. And it was
yeah,
because that demon had a hand. He was like, I'm the one who possessed the man who thrust the blade. And he'd killed a priest who ended up becoming a saint. And
yeah.
and, and he was just in awe of the fact that, in hindsight, because you don't interact, you don't communicate, or what's the word I'm trying to think of? It's just like you don't go back and forth talking to the demon. You give it commands. It's command after command, command. And that this demon was the same demon who had killed a saint 500 years before.
If you can believe the word of a demon, right? That's in the Catholic.
True.
Yeah, so
Which
yeah,
is a whole different realm.
yeah. I've spent some time contemplating that. They have the best stories, that's for sure. But theologically, I'm just not on board with it all. It it seems like too much bureaucracy
I
to
get
put it
that.
simply. And
I mean,
and
I went to Catholic school
yeah,
for 7 years, and my theological joke for a long time was, I grew up Baptist, but I went to Catholic school, which explains why I'm Methodist.
yeah. Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I do have a lot of respect for the Catholics, but that's just because of my upbringing. Is just I went to mass once a week
Yeah.
for 7 years, and there's the reverence with which they perform the mass is, to me, is
Preferable to the showmanship with which they perform the evangelical holy rolling. Yeah,
see, and
none of it's perfect.
I've never I've
It's
never ventured quite off on that deal, but I grew up in a Baptist church. We were pretty laid back,
yeah,
but what I wish the Catholics had, because I mean, with the Catholics you have the homily, which is only like a little 5 minute talk,
yeah,
and but then I grew up on the backside of that, listening to like a 30-minute sermon.
right.
And but I want that 30-minute sermon too. I want to be given something that I can chew on. Give me something that I can take, walk away with at the end of Sunday, and think about that week and chew on, make it relevant. You know, and that's very important for me too. So, as much comfort as I get in reverence I have for the Catholic faith. For me, it's still missing that. I need that nugget. I need something to chew on.
Get
But
what you
that's the
need.
Protestants.
Get what you need. Get what you need, bro.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. The Catholics believe in curses. And a lot of evangelicals, I've been in churches where they talk about curses, and spiritual warfare is really big in the Pentecostal uh slice of that pie.
Hmm.
It's less so in the Baptists, if at all. Yeah.
Yeah,
Baptists,
not
it's
much.
kind of interesting because they're not really very liberal when it comes to, you try to think what distinguishes them from Presbyterians. Yeah. It's just theology. It's not so much practice. Um,
I think the Presbyterians. Actually,
just in
the
general. I just mean as Catholic light. You could say Methodist, Presbyterian, Episcopalian. I'm just saying what makes Baptists evangelical.
But see, but then there's Baptist and then there's evangelical. I mean,
Well,
it's
Baptist fits in the evangelical camp.
but that's only in the South.
That's the
For the most part.
largest. The Southern Baptist Convention is most Baptists.
Yeah,
Um,
but it
anyway,
started out as the Anabaptists, and
yeah, let's not do that. That'll be really boring. Uh, but yeah, Baptists, they don't believe in curses.
all right. Well, let's talk about John Wesley. Oh,
The Catholics do believe in curses.
yeah,
I've heard stories where the priest will, you know, come to a family and come to a home and say, well, you know what? I think you've been cursed. And he'll prescribe some prayers and
mm,
some exorcism type procedure. In one case, I heard of a priest, and this was in Latin America. He found, like, he was drawn to a corner of the property of a home where someone's health was just like, and it was just one thing after another. And the priest discerned that there was a curse, and they were, it was like this frantic scene. I can't remember where I heard the story. It was really well told. There was like a priest in the hospital with a dying woman, and he was like, I just caught a glimpse of this in my mind's eye. He's calling now. So he's like, quick, run to the the southwest corner, and dig. And
yeah,
you're gonna find something. And they unearth like this jar, right? With the cursed objects. And he was like, okay, go throw it in the ocean and say this prayer. And then
mm,
the woman's health was just like restored.
yeah,
That's a classic curse story. And
yeah.
there's so many of those. So like in that scenario, who's making that woman sick? You know? And then did demons make people sick, right? Well, in the Bible, some sick people would come to Jesus, and what would he do? Often he would cast out a demon, right?
Or just lay hands and well, there was casting out demons, but there's also just
There are
you
other things, but
just
I mean in the
get
context,
up, take your mat, and let's
yeah,
go.
right, but let's just stay focused here. Can demons cause infirmity, right? Do they? What is making that woman sick? Is it right? So the priest is like, she's been cursed. You need to find the cursed item, remove the curse,
But I think okay,
and then she'll be made well.
but
So
here's
what
one
is
thing
the
too.
source of the sickness? Is it like
Okay, it
this
is
is
a
what
weak,
I want to think this
but it's
through.
also weak. I think it would be. I'm not obviously we know not the experts, but my personal opinion would be that the person probably had some sort of weak constitution in some way that allowed it
Spiritual
to
constitution or physical constitution?
spiritual.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. Right.
And I
Yeah.
mean, because I mean, if you're protected and if you have a
Yeah.
protection over
If
you,
you have a
well, then,
protection, yeah. But let's not talk about the protected people. Let's talk about the one who was sick with the curse.
yeah, they're
What's
free
making her
game.
sick? What's making
They're
her
free
sick?
game.
To the demonic
In that
in
case,
that
yeah,
case? And so it was a demon that was making her sick?
yeah.
And in the cases in the Bible where you read about Jesus, like there
Casting
was
demons out of like out of the person with fits
the
and
blind and mute man, right? Came to Jesus for healing. And Jesus cast a demon out of him. And then his sight and speech was restored.
mhm.
Right? So what you hear a lot of people today, they apologize for Jesus, right? They're like, well, the demon is a metaphor, they didn't have modern science and all this stuff. Like we
Yeah,
know now that demons don't cause illness, right? do we know now that demons don't cause illness?
I think anything's possible. I don't put anything off the table.
Certain people, it's off the table. You go into a Baptist church and it's off the table.
But I'm saying, there's obviously, do demons cause every illness?
You go into a Methodist church, it's off the table, Cole.
In Methodist church, they're very liberal. It's
Yeah, I know.
pretty laid back. They don't
They
they
don't,
don't they
yeah,
don't they don't delve into anything dark. They don't. Do you know how many times I've seen somebody saved in a
zero
Methodist
times.
church?
0 times. Yeah.
Zero,
Yeah, I know.
zero.
I know. That's why I'm telling you, it's off the table at your church. Okay.
Yeah,
My dad is a Methodist pastor right now. Yeah, it's funny. Um, yeah, demons don't cause illness. That's archaic,
but is
right?
it? I don't take anything off the table.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't. It's almost like,
But you consider yourself to be
but it's almost like
a man of science, right? Even though you're an English teacher, I mean, you
I'm a
employ
critical
the
thinker.
scientific
I'm a
method.
critical thinker.
Yeah, you like to. Yeah, that's better.
I think critically.
You're a critical thinker,
Yeah.
and you don't see it like what is it that allows you as a critical thinker and a person who isn't opposed to science. You're not opposed to science as being some evil unto itself, right? It's a process by which we observe things
Or
and
some
record data.
monolithic thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't. You're yeah. So right, there's scientism. People who worship science as if it's a generating force rather than just an observational
Method.
method. Yeah.
Mm.
Um. Yeah. What does it allow that allows you to be such a critical thinker?
And allow myself an avenue of faith.
Yeah. How do you marry those two things? Like, how can you say that demons can cause illness in this day and age?
Because I don't pretend that I understand God, and I don't pretend that I understand the workings of the spiritual world. I think we have an idea, but I'm not. I'm. I'm. I humble myself in that my little brain, no matter how hard I try, will never truly comprehend the workings of God in the spiritual realm. And I can guess and I can try, you know, but it's just, I'm not going to pretend that I'm smart enough.
A blessing on your house, Cole.
Thank you for the blessing.
Yeah. That's it. Humility.
Yeah.
Yeah. The intellect isn't the only way forward. It's often the
Yeah.
barrier, right?
But I think that goes back to what you're talking about is that when people are really engaged, in science and they make science their god, or it's the end all. I know because of science, and if it's not scientific, well, then it's just not real. Well, those people are not humble. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
they just
They're
they're
there
consumed. They're consumed by their intellect.
by pride. They're their own gods. Yeah.
Oh
If
yeah,
they can't know it, it can't be known, or there's nothing else to know. Yeah.
exactly. And, and
Yeah.
and and when you say it like that, you realize how ridiculous it is.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
It is so just ridiculous.
The best of them are agnostic, right? They realize that it's a ridiculous claim to say that I know there's no God. But
Mhm.
the interesting ones to me aren't even them. The interesting ones to me are the dabblers of like, you know, occult. These people that you see them moving and shaking, influencing in high places, right?
Yeah.
all throughout culture and in political arenas. And also they are signaling. They're signaling through their art, through
Yeah.
their associations, sometimes through their clothing, uh, that they have an appreciation for witchcraft.
Yeah. Dark things.
Yeah, that's interesting to me.
It is. It is. And it's some of the stuff I've seen is pretty shocking. It's just like, really?
Yeah.
It's it's pretty out there. I mean, I don't know. It's
Try it. Let me put you on the spot.
all right. Go ahead.
So since 2020, what's been the most rattling revelation for you in any context, in any arena?
I don't know. I mean, that's something I might have to really delve into. But I mean, at least something I saw recently. And I mean, take it for what it's worth. But it is kind of disturbing when you see all these clips of all these celebrities when they talk about their success and they say, I sold my soul to the devil. And they all say it. And there you have this clip after clip, clip after clip after clip. And it's like, there's no coming back. And you listen to the lyrics of what they're saying, and it's just like, and to hear two or three is one thing, but then it goes into six, seven, eight, 10, and you start going, what? And they're all saying it.
Yeah.
It's like when they talk about their success, it's like, oh, I signed it in blood. I sold my soul to the devil.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, but it's so cliche. It's cliche, but then again, it's not. It's just like, really, really,
Yeah.
really, really,
Yeah.
and it's scary. It's scary, but it's just like, but what disturbs me most is a lot of these are music artists,
Yeah.
and again, it goes back to what what was Lucifer's role in heaven, but he was in charge of music.
Yeah. Well, that's a little speculation, but yeah, he was a big deal for sure.
Yeah, that's what
Um,
I mean. I read that. Maybe it was from
People say that. People say that. It's not, there's no Bible passage that says he was the angel in charge of music. But
yeah.
I mean,
I've heard it multiple times, so I guess I just
yeah,
adopted
no, I
it.
grew up hearing that too. Yeah. That's probably true. I don't know. It's not hard to imagine for
He was in
sure.
charge of big things. Yeah,
Yeah. He was, second, he unlike Jesus, he thought that likening himself unto God was a thing to be considered.
yeah.
That was his deal. He
Which
wanted,
always, which has always blown my mind, and this is one reason why I think part of part of my part of my humbling is, I mean, I know it's just like, could you imagine being in heaven with God and then revolting against Him? It's just like, how could you imagine that ever happening? Now, I'm a tiny human sitting, here imagining those things. So of course it's unimaginable, just to be in his presence and decide, eh,
it is insightful. It
you
does
know,
it does provide a lot of insight
there's,
as far as Lucifer's stature, right? Like
yeah,
just
but
think of your kids. Like it's not hard for me to imagine my 6-year-old imagining himself, as more fit to lead the family than me right now,
yeah,
because we're so alike. He's like, "Oh, you're just kind of a larger version of me. You're probably slower and dumber." Like,
Yeah, your ideas are, but I mean, but I mean, to be with him from from creation and eternity, to be there forever, and then just to have the hubris to just be like,
yeah, right.
is
He,
bold.
he
It's bold.
he's
But of course,
very
but of
confident.
course,
Yeah.
but of course, we do that to God all the time.
Well, not, yeah, some do, but not to that degree. I mean, I understand your initial
Yeah,
statement. It's hard to
yeah,
imagine, but it's insight into how spectacular Lucifer actually is, right?
yeah,
Like, we're no match for him, you know? We're no
yeah,
match for him. So that was Jesus also. He was like, you will be sifted like wheat, except I prayed for you. So, I'm God, so I should cover it. But
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so the celebrity, yeah, a lot of the curtain's kind of been pulled back on a lot of that stuff in the last few, everybody's just been spending a lot more time on social media and people are posting that stuff.
Yeah.
This sold their souls. Um, it's not really a new thing either, is it? This one guy I follow, Joe Schimmel, he's a pastor in Simi Valley. He had this like documentary expose back in the 80s called They Sold Their Souls for Rock and Roll. And
Yeah.
he's I really like him. I like his demeanor, and
Yeah.
he's just got that kind of laid back California accent. I don't know. I just like the way he talks. I like listening to him. He's not pompous, he's not proud. He just believes in what he's saying. And
Yeah.
you should check him out actually. He's got like an Instagram feed. Um but it's like you can look at what a lot of these celebrities are endorsing and
Hmm.
see that this is contrary to what Christianity endorses.
Yeah.
Not just contrary, it's like it 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 seems most people, I don't think they understand what Luciferianism is about, right? I don't think they know the tenets of Luciferianism and the Gnostic religions that are built around Lucifer as, basically the light bringer and
I
man's
mean,
the
actually, I
liberator.
guess I'm kind of the only thing I know about Satanism is the traditional sense of it being a fertility religion and being more of a like pagan. I only know the pagan aspect of
Yes. Yeah.
Satanism, but I
So
think
that's that
you're speaking of
Satanism. Yeah.
something above that.
So paganism isn't Satanism. It's more
Well, I'm saying
like
the
it's
pagan
it's
side of Satanism. It's like the because if you look at the Church of Satan, it's a fertility religion. It's like traditionally was.
no,
Obviously, I didn't delve too deep, but I mean, I
yeah.
at some point I read up on it, and I'm like, okay, that's enough. All I need to know, and I just left it alone.
Well,
But
yeah, so the Church of Satan, as founded by Anton LaVey, is
yeah,
basically an atheistic organization. It's basically an anarchist society. Um,
yeah,
that's their front, right? But there's reason to believe that that's not really the case. That there is um, like one of the Manson murderers did an interview where she was like, no, Anton LaVey actually does believe in a literal Lucifer and he does worship him, but that's more than he would ever admit. Okay.
yeah.
To them, it was a social movement. That's how they sold it to the public. And I guess that's how they got Sammy Davis Jr. and different people on board, like,
Oh, I didn't realize all that.
oh yeah, it was chic to be a Satanist in the 60s and even 70s, even kind of beyond um those murders, the Manson murders. Like it still kind of stayed in fashion for a while.
That's wild.
Um, but but again, it's like they present this false front where it's like, oh, it's just we don't believe in the devil. We're atheists, right? It's just
It's
art.
all about self power and believing
Yeah,
in yourself.
it's about feminism or whatever. But and in many cases, most of the adherents, that's true. I believe. You just look at the fruit, right? They're not. They don't live life as somebody who's indebted to this, king demon or whatever. They just do what they want.
Yeah.
Interestingly, that's the mantra of Thelema, Crowley's religion. Do what thou wilt. Crowley certainly believed in literal entities, demonic entities.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, and he was a curse hurler, Aleister Crowley.
Hmm.
You look at his
Yeah.
influence. That I think that's probably been the thing for me. Looking at not doing my own research, but just leaning on other people's research of Aleister Crowley, and seeing how widespread his influence is still today. Um, it's been really, it's on the same in the same discussion as what you're talking about with the entertainers who
Yeah.
claim to have sold their souls or whatever.
I
But
mean, at least my understanding, a lot of Aleister Crowley was. I mean, there's a good bit of like hedonism with Aleister Crowley, and that's always going to be uh, attractive.
you have like Jay-Z wearing "Do What Thou Wilt," which is
Yeah.
Crowley's maxim. So he's very prominent. You have his picture on the Sergeant Pepper album, which was
Yeah.
released. It was released the day. It was released 20 years to the day after his death.
Really, I didn't realize that much.
It's been 20 years ago today. Sergeant Pepper taught the band to play.
Oh.
Interesting. It just, who knows? The Beatles are a great rabbit hole to go down. Ah, curses.
All right. Yeah, I was about to
Cro-
say.
Crosby, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, right? Crosby said he was asked what does he love about doing music and performing live, and he said it's the easiest way to cast a spell on the largest number of people.
Ooh.
Talking about music
Ooh.
and
Yeah.
curses, right?
Ooh.
Think about that. Music as a curse.
Oh, I believe it. I,
Yeah.
I I believe that. I believe that. I believe that's totally possible.
Be careful, little
Because it
ears,
is.
what you
Because you
hear.
do get. Well, I mean, you do. You get the power of music is nuts. It's like what music does to us is really, if you really look at it, it's just like from an outside observer from another planet. We be might as well be monkeys with sticks. Because as soon as music comes on and you see what we all do, we might as well just be sitting there with sticks going, just banging on things. I mean, just like in unison, just blah, 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 blah. I mean, music just causes people to react.
Hypnotic. Yeah.
It's hypnotic,
Yeah.
and it's without thinking, and you're also part of like almost like group think. It's like if we were all sitting at Jazz Fest, even you and me today, sitting at Jazz Fest, a big enough group, everybody starts dancing, we'd probably sit there and start, you know, start bopping our heads and
Yeah.
bopping around. It's just
I like to think about David playing the harp for the demon possessed King Saul. You familiar with that
yeah,
story?
no,
It's well, Saul, the Bible said that God sent demons to torment him, I guess. The implication being
yeah,
that he was possessed and he would fly into these fits of rage and he would send for the boy David to come and play for him to calm him.
yeah.
Can you imagine? And it's like David would be sitting there playing, and then all of a sudden Saul would hurl a spear at his head, and he'd be like, "Ruh." Like, sorry, sorry. Right? And he'd be like,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, David. You're so lovely. But yeah, so like even the demons are not even the demons are impacted by music.
Oh yeah.
and they can be soothed by the music, apparently, you know,
Yeah.
or hypnotized or whatever. Like when Saul needed a break from the raging voices in his head, he would send for David.
That's wild.
Yeah. So you believe in curses?
Yeah. Back again. Curses. I believe in my personal experience, I I would never on purpose with hate in my heart truly wish harm upon anyone, you know, for a lot of reasons. That's the biggest reason. Number two, I'm not a very big man, and I can't go to prison, so I'm not going to cause any harm to people.
Well, you can't go to jail anymore for witchcraft, I don't think.
Well, I'm not going to be accused of hurting anyone ever.
Yeah. Uh, so you think it's the demons that enact the cursing?
I don't know. I mean, ultimately, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. That was
I,
great.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When you think about the way that we as human beings are dependent on one another, we're dependent on one another's goodness, you know? Like
Oh
my
yeah.
my life is in your hands every time we're together, you know? Anytime you drive onto the highway, like
Oh
your
yeah.
your life is in the hands of the people around you. That's part of the deal. And so,
Oh, and I think about that sometimes whenever I'll see on Facebook, somebody, oh, so and so died in a traffic accident in Georgia or something like that, and it's just some random person. To me, it's some random person, but that person wasn't random to everybody. To somebody, that person was somebody. And I'm like, it's fucking tragic, and how fragile our lives, you know, are.
it seems like part of the design for me is where I was going. Like you don't like to think that someone else could harm you by their will. It's like it's easy
Mhm.
for me to think. I've had this conversation with one other friend of mine that just kind of jokingly, I was implying that, we had a shared experience in a church. Actually that church that it was discussed in my first two episodes, um,
Yeah.
where there was this like demon possessed woman who was kind of like tormenting
Oh yeah,
people at
yeah.
my
I
church,
remember
right?
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was contemplating maybe, the fallout of that, if there was any consequence. Like, why did she just stop? And I imagine her like in her basement doing curses, on our church leaders, on my dad and on this other guy's dad. And looking back through the years at sort of the way that our family's unraveled, and particularly our
Yeah.
fathers um, struggled in their choices.
Yeah.
And I just kind of, I almost as a joke, I was just like, maybe she like did some kind of curse on our dads. And he was like immediately like, no, I don't, that can't be, our free will can't be breached, by some curse. And I
No,
sympathize with that.
your free will
I
can't be
sympathize with
breached,
that. But
but
don't derail me here. I've been working on this for about five
I
minutes
got you.
already.
Go ahead.
Um, so it just seems like part of the deal. It's part, yeah, I understand his objection to that, right? I understand his objection that I can just be going about my business and then all of a sudden be blasted by somebody else's ill will, in a supernatural way. But then it's like, well, in the same way, you can just be punched in the face randomly or run off the road randomly. Your life is always in someone else's hands. And sort of the gist of what life is about, according to the Judeo Christian model, and Islam even, like from what I know of it, and pretty much every major religion, it's about interrelationship, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, especially Christianity, because I know the most about it. It's more about our relationship with our neighbor, not more. It's as much. It's like it. It's like our relationship to God. Jesus said the greatest commandment, love God, and the next one's like it, love your neighbor, right?
Yes.
So it's like, yeah, we're vulnerable. Yeah, our lives are in each other's hands, and we can choose to do harm. It's God's job to redeem it when things go wrong.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean we can't harm each other.
True.
And in that space, somewhere, I am able to allow for this cursing, you know? I can forgive it at least. I can forgive people who adopt it as part of their life experience, or maybe, like in your case, like you think you are aware, secondhand of an instance where it occurred. And I know I've heard a lot more dramatic stories than that, like the one I shared earlier. On gut reaction is no, it can't be. But then again, like, upon further thought, just let it marinate for a while. And maybe not too deeply, but just let it float around,
Yeah.
The thing that gives it space and the thing that makes it worthy of discussion for me is what I just said. Our lives are always in the hands of our neighbors.
Hmm.
As Christians, our job is to love our neighbor. And if they curse us, bless them, right? Because we don't
Sure.
wrestle against flesh and blood. Our fight's not against them. Our fight's against, the devil and all
Yeah.
the unseen tempters and all that. You know, we depend on God. We aren't really at war with our neighbor for even resources if we're doing as we're taught as
Yeah.
Christians. It's just
No, that's
fascinating.
true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. And I've often thought that, or if we actually if we followed God's instructions, there would be no wars, there would be no famine, there'd be no problems. We would live in a heaven-like environment if we truly everyone collectively followed God's instructions. I mean, there would be, outside of natural disasters because we're susceptible to it. But then when that happened, we would come in and rescue and save the rest. But that'd be the worst case scenario on the planet would just be, oh, there's a hurricane, so let's all pull our resources and help the survivors.
Isn't that
But
how it
that'd
was?
be
Is that how it was in the 80s?
no, the '80s were horrible, dude. You don't remember the '80s?
They were fantastic. They were fantastic. Didn't we all just
No,
love
no,
each other?
I remember the '80s. They were great. He Man.
You
Jim
ride your bike,
Cotta.
yeah, you ride your
You
bike down
know,
to the 7-Eleven. Nobody kidnapped you. You just, you heard the stories, but it just made life a little more exciting.
yeah.
Yeah. You talked to people, people would cuss at you, but they look you in the eye, it wasn't done on Facebook or whatever. Yeah. It's like,
They
you
curse
little
you to your
bastard.
face.
You steal from me, you little bastard. No. I got accused of stealing a bouncy ball one time in a grocery store. But, it had rolled under the racks. It was just a ball out of the packaging. I saw it. When you're like 7, a bouncy
Yeah.
ball is like a thing to have. So I just reached under there and picked it up and I was like, it's not in that package. I stuck it in my pocket. And like some grocery store clerk came up to me and was like, if I ever see you do that again, I'm gonna call the cops. And I was like, all right.
Okay.
And my mom was like a few aisles over. I didn't even tell her. I was like, all right, I guess I get to keep it. I don't know. Just
Yeah.
weird. But that was like one of the more traumatic things that happened to me in my childhood. Not so bad.
Not so bad.
You have your skirmishes with the neighborhood bullies and stuff. The 80s were good.
Yeah.
Next time we talk, let's talk about that.
We need to talk about the 80s.
Yeah, the 80s. That's what I'm saying.
The 80s will be the topic of conversation. Even though my experience is going to be limited a little bit because in the 80s I was confined to 40 acres on Harmon Johnson Road.
In your family cult?
You, huh?
In your family cult?
No, I just didn't have any neighbors. You've been out there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Do you remember?
There was
I
nowhere
just
to go.
remember
Yeah.
my mom called us losers.
Yeah, I remember that. That's pretty on the mark, I guess. Yeah.
At that time, we
Yeah.
were.
Yeah, but I'll actually never forget that time when you told me. You were like, dude, when you told me about your grandmother drowning,
Yeah,
that was just so bizarre.
it was. It was.
Horrible.
It was very strange.
Yeah.
It was just so unexpected. I mean, well, it's always unexpected. Nobody expects that shit, but it just, I don't know.
And there it's like you think it's the recoil of the curse that your aunt launched. Played a
In
role in that.
hindsight, I mean, I didn't think of it immediately, but
Yeah.
in hindsight, when I started thinking about everything, and
Yeah.
and I remember I held on to those tarot cards actually all the way up until I got married, and then after I got married, I had in my closet. I had my brother had made a camouflage like at the bottom of pants, military pants. They were like tie string where you could tie the bottom of military pants tight. He had taken an old pair and turned it into a bag to where he could tie the bag, and that's where I kept the tarot cards, and I had them for years and years and years. And then finally, when I got married, I the tarot cards came over there. I mean, heck, man, that was back in like 2012. So that's not too long ago, you know. And I remember looking at them like I'm keeping the sack. I don't even know where it is now, but I just threw them out. I was like, that I got to be done with them, and just I
And they
got
didn't
rid of
show
them.
back up. They didn't show back up. It didn't take multiple efforts. You didn't
No,
have to burn them.
mm-mm.
Yeah, that's creepy. Yeah. Um, when you were telling that Ouija board story this past Halloween,
Yeah, yeah.
fantastic story.
Thank you.
Um, but it reminded me, and your aunt was mentioned during that story. I
I
can't
guess
remember.
so. Yeah,
Yeah. She was around and influencing you in that time. And it
yeah.
reminded me of the opening scenes of The Exorcist, you know, where
Oh, I have to watch that again.
don't watch it. No, don't do that to yourself. Actually, it may not even have been the movie. It might have been the true story of the boy, you know, from St.
Oh
Louis,
yeah, it was. It was a yeah.
where his aunt was a spiritist and taught
Mm,
him to use the Ouija board and you know, open the door for him and his interest, and then,
yeah.
he got possessed.
I feel blessed and protected. Um, things things could have gone a lot worse.
That's what I was going to
Things
ask you.
could have.
Do you think there was any repercussion from your involvement in the occult? Like, did you have to,
I don't know. I think I struggle with things. I think I struggle with things that I brought upon myself from opening myself up to certain things. Um, but it could be a lot worse. I'll say that much, and
can
that's
you
the
give me
truth.
more than certain things? Give me something more than certain things. Are we talking at least in the realm of the occult? What are we talking about here?
No, 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 no.
Are
It's
you a
not in the realm of the
Freemason? Are you a Freemason? Have you joined any secret societies?
no.
And you haven't been using your powers as a wart remover.
No. You want to talk about that real quick and then
Yeah.
cut it
Yeah.
off?
Let's end on that. All right.
Let's end on this. All right. So the other story I had that we talked about yesterday
Well, here's what I
was
wanted to know. I asked if your aunt, I was like, okay, how'd your aunt get into the mystical practices? Was your grandmother?
because
Well,
her
yeah, I asked if your grandmother had.
actually, can I have like 30 seconds?
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Give me like 30
I'll do
seconds.
some elevator music.
All right, do that, please.
What's what she did? What's what she did? A little fade out here.
You got a wart?
I gotta work. All right. Yeah, so
Duct tape.
I was asking you,
Duct
was your
tape.
I actually bought 3 rolls of duct tape today
Oh, you
because
start putting it on it. Cut out
all
your
right,
little squares and start putting it on it. Put a band-aid over the duct tape, and as soon as it comes off, put another one. You'll suffocate it.
this episode
Suffocate
of
that wall.
the Outskirts podcast has been brought to you by Cole Gill's wart removal duct tape. Wart removal tape. All
No, no,
right.
no. The quicksilver removal tape. Make sure that you have the gray kind, because if
Cold
it's not
buy.
the silver gray, you know,
That's what I got.
you will have a wart another day.
It's perfect. There you go. We'll just have to write a song for that now. I'll get your jingle later. Yeah, so I was asking you if your grandmother was a traiteur. Okay. And that's like the Creole. I don't know, I assumed she would be because North Louisiana, but down south they have the
She was East
traiteurs.
Texas. She
Oh,
was like,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah. But they
north of Tyler.
that's like a folk folk magic healer type person. But as far as you know, you said no, no, no. My grandmother was pretty normal, except that.
She was kind of known, like my mother always pointed out, that my grandmother would just sometimes say, I just feel like I need to make a pie. I just need to make a little cake. I need to make a dessert. And then serendipitously, someone would show up unannounced, and she always had a dessert ready. It was almost like she was kind of slightly clairvoyant. Like she would know, something would tell her, bake a pie, make a pie, make a cake. And she just always had a dessert ready for when somebody would just randomly show up.
And so that was
Which,
noted by your mom and her sister. Like you guys talked about
yeah,
that.
because I mean that was, you're dealing with somebody born in 1929 or before, no, even before that. She was 10. She was born in 1919. So she was 10 when the stock market crashed, which often, like to me in my mind, contributed to her living such a conservative lifestyle as far as like saving everything. She would
Right.
have she would have her soap water. She had two like plastic bins sitting in both her sinks. One was soapy, one was rinse water. So she would wash in one, rinse in the other, and then put the dish up or to dry. And then the next day, she would dump out the wash water, but she would take the rinse water and put it over to the wash water and add soap to it to
That's just good
conserve.
common sense. That's just good common sense.
Yeah, but she would like conserve on a crazy level. When I would, you know, when you were a child and you went over to your grandparents' house, I'm assuming you went over to your grandparents' house.
Yeah. Once a year, maybe.
When you took a bath, how many inches of bath water did you have?
Uh, it wasn't a predetermined number of inches.
Three.
3 inches.
Yeah, 3 inches. And you had a scoop that you would scoop with, and you would put it over yourself to rinse yourself.
Wow.
Um, and I mean, she conserved to a crazy. When I was young, I thought she was poor. I really did. When I was like really young, I thought she was poor. And then when I became a teenager, I realized she had money because people. I realized people would go to the bank of grandma to borrow money, like my mom and stuff. And then when she died, she was worth. I mean, she was well into the six figures.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, and I I got $10,000 when she passed away, and I went to Ireland. Remember when I went to Ireland?
Yeah, I was in Afghanistan. That was really
Yeah, yeah. So I spent my $10,000 I got from Grandma in Ireland, and when I came home, my stepdad, who's kind of a conservative guy himself as far as monetarily and otherwise, but he said, Cole, if you hadn't gone to Ireland, you know, you would still have like $10,000 in your bank. And I remember telling Johnny, I
yeah.
remember looking at him straight in the face saying, Johnny, if I could go back, I would do it all over again. It's just like, man, it's just
I think that's a good use of $10,000. I came home from Afghanistan with about $20,000 and I spent it all at Enoch's, the Irish pub, over the course of about a year. Yeah.
basically, yeah, that's what I did over
I
the
bought
course of,
I bought those people a new truck. Yeah.
yeah,
Anyway, we got sidetracked. Look, your grandmother was the mother
clairvoyant.
of a tarot card reader and a curse hurler. What do you
And
call?
she also got rid of warts.
Yeah, okay. That's not
So that
normal.
that's
That's
that's what we
abnormal.
wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Home in on that.
So so it was a known thing within the family that if if you had a wart, my grandmother's name was Wilma, but the rest of the family called her Wim. And if you had a wart and you needed it taken care of or gotten rid of, you go to Wim. And she would say, okay, I'll take care of it. So growing up, I always heard this, like, 6, 7, 8 years old, that my grandmother could get rid of it. And there was a method, there was a way to do it. And I asked her, I was like, Grandma, how do you get rid of warts? She's like, well, I can't tell you. And then it just went on and on and on. And finally she said, well, the tradition is, I have to tell a male because she was told by a male, and it goes from male to female. So I was supposed to tell basically my nieces, I was supposed to pass it on to them. And so finally, when I was about 10 or 12 years old or something, finally she told me the method for getting rid of warts.
How well known was your grandmother for getting rid of warts at this
I
point?
mean, well, I'll put it like this: my grandmother was one of 12 or 13 kids.
Wow. Okay.
So a lot. So like we went to the family
Like
reunion.
scores of grandchildren,
Oh,
right?
scores of people. Yeah, just score.
Yeah.
Like when in the eighties, whenever we would go to a family reunion, there'd be hundreds of people there.
And they
And
all
like,
knew her.
oh yeah, we all knew. Yeah, yeah. And they always had all the books laid out, all the photo albums of all the previous family reunions through the 70s and 60s. And this was the first year I took Jesse. Oh, actually, second time period, but Jesse and I went to the family reunion recently, and there was probably close to probably 50 people
Did anybody come up to you and ask you to
to lay
remove their
hands on their
wart?
warts.
To
No,
remove their wart? Get back
no.
to the story. Okay, your grandmother, you're
So,
12 years
so
old, and she's finally like, look, it's time. I'm gonna pass
I'm
this
gonna
on
tell
to you.
you, I'm gonna tell you how to get rid of the warts. And I'm like, okay,
And
I'm ready.
did she say, now this is gonna be your job in the family? Like when I'm gone, you're
No,
gonna be the wart
I
remover.
don't remember that. What she told me, it was kind of her way of storytelling. It was like she just kind of was. She almost kind of sing-songy in the way she told things. She's like, okay, so here's the deal, and da da da, and da da da, and da da da. And she said, now one thing I need to tell you is that if you go after she explained it to me, she said, now remember, if if you're going to take care of a wart and somebody sees you walking out in the field or going out and somebody asks you, you know, where are you going? You need to just tell them, well, I was just, going for a walk or something. You need to come back and don't go at that time. Find another time when nobody sees you walking off to go do this. But the thing that got
The
me,
implication being,
I don't know what the
man,
implication was.
what is the implication? That's interesting. No one can see you
It just seems a fault. But
going
here's
about
the
your
deal:
business. Yeah.
it goes back to like my disappointment was because when she explained the process, it was so folk remedy method. There was, I mean, of course, I built this up in my head for years and years, and I was expecting, you know, fireworks and I don't know. I was expecting some like magic or I don't know what I was expecting. And I have to go back to, and we talked about this yesterday. We kind of hit on this, is that I have to go back to the mindset of a 10 to 12-year old.
Hmm.
You know, um, is that I was very disappointed in the method because it was very folk ways
Yeah, but
of
now, as an adult and as somebody who understands the pagan element of present in all these forms of witchcraft, does it make more sense to you, and does it fit into that space? You're 10 years old, 12 years old, you're expecting fantasia. Now you're a grown up and you
yeah.
understand these rituals, they're all done in nature with natural materials, right? You're not summoning ectoplasm, you're
If
dealing with
I had
rocks and
okay, if you had described, and I don't want to divulge um, the method, not for any reason besides the fact that my grandmother swore me to it being a secret, and it's just out of respect for her of for that. Is that I'll put it this way: is that if I looked up Wiccan wart removal and this method came up, I would not be shocked. I've been like, okay, that seems like a Wiccan um, method, very natural, very
pagan,
earthy,
very pagan.
pagan, very
Yeah.
pagan um, method for getting rid of. It's just you go work with what nature provides and let nature do its thing. And as a miraculous, completely, totally disconnected. There's no connection. There's no connection between what is
For
prescribed
for
to
example,
do. Yeah.
perhaps you will bore a hole into the side of an elm tree, write a word on a piece of paper, and wad it up into a ball and stick it in the hole.
And
Something
as
along
soon
those
as that
lines.
piece of paper,
Dissolves, the
the
wart
wart
is
will go away.
yeah.
Yes, yes, that's exactly.
That's witchcraft.
That's very
Your
close.
grandmother
That's
was a witch,
very
dude.
that's very close. That's very close.
And you're the male heir. What was her
Hmm.
maiden name?
Matheson.
To the Matheson witch clan. But you haven't put
It's a
it to
lot of
any,
Baptists.
you've not put that to any use, right?
No.
And you've not passed it on.
Mm.
So it's going to die with you.
Yeah.
Wow. Was it a blessing or a curse, Cole? To be the last Matheson witch.
Oh well, I never practiced it. So am I a witch? I mean,
I guess you did have the
I got the
cards. You
nose.
had the tarot.
I
You had
got
the
the nose
cards.
and the nose.
You did the clairvoyant thing for a while.
I did. I read tarot cards for a while,
There you go.
and I was pretty good at it.
So Cole, I have a wart on my right leg. Yeah. Let's see. I don't know if I can get it up there.
Hey,
It's down here, just above, it's down here just above my ankle.
you know that duct tape that you did. You need to cut out a bunch of little squares and put on. Is it right there?
Right there. See
Is
that?
is it one or is it a cluster?
It's one. It's
Only
just one.
one.
Only one. And
Hmm. I can probably
it's just
take
like
care of
sprang up
that.
out of nowhere. It's almost like it happened to facilitate your decision
Huh. Do you want
whether
me
or not.
to? You want me to see if I can take care of it?
Oh, now I have to make the decision. Do I? Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we've established that it's witchcraft, right? So I think that's against my religion. Yeah.
Might be. I would rather not. Yeah, I'd rather not. I'd rather not delve into some Wiccan
So
tomfoolery.
so that's part of the reason why you're not going to do it is because you have a religious objection to it.
I think now we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but
Yeah.
initially it was my great disappointment in it being just to me it just seemed like bullshit.
Yeah,
It's
at
like
10. But
even at 10 years old, I'm like, this is crap. And I just let it go. And as I said yesterday, I hadn't thought about this in like 34 years, you know.
okay, yeah.
And now 34 years later, I'm now thinking about it and I'm like, I give no power. I see no power in the steps explained to me. There's nothing. I believe if I prayed for your wart to go away, for that to be more powerful than the steps explained to me by my grandmother.
Okay, that's fair. Except
I would
that's
have
fair.
more faith in
Okay,
that.
that's fair for a Christian.
Yeah,
You say there's no power in it. She was known to be a wart remover.
true. But I guess that's just God. That's God protecting me. You
Okay,
know,
yeah.
I was already susceptible at that point in my life, susceptible to magical thinking
Yeah.
with the tarot cards and everything, and in seeing actually results from it, which in hindsight is kind of scary.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know, just
So
like
restate your answer. Do you believe in the power of the procedure, the magical procedure?
I don't because I just don't because again I'm going back to my little 10 or 12 year old self, what I
Don't
felt at
no.
that time.
I'm talking about right now. 45-year-old Colt. Do you believe and you believe in curses? You believe in demons? Do you
I
believe
won't be
that your grandma?
45 for another. I won't be 45 for another 3 weeks. So
All right. Okay. Do you
my
think your
44-year
grandma?
old self.
Does your 44-year-old self think your grandmother actually participated in miraculously removing people's warts?
I don't know. One reason I have trouble answering that is because I love my grandmother.
You're afraid of the consequences for her if it's true?
I don't think that that would be because I mean she's a very godly woman and all the other things. I don't believe that could be the one
A
thing,
damning
the
thing. Yeah,
damning
okay.
thing,
Okay, so
because
answer it.
I mean
Answer it.
because
Answer it.
because otherwise we're all screwed. If something as simple as that, and that's not simple, but you understand what I'm saying is
I
that
know what you're saying. Let's not
if
drag it
things
out.
end, yeah.
Look, you change your answer then.
So do I? So ask the question again.
Do you believe your grandmother, through her procedure, which we've defined as pagan folk magic, that she actually was able to remove people's warts?
I don't know. I
Do
didn't
you
see it
believe? No,
myself.
I know. Do you believe it? She was
Anecdotally,
she was known.
anecdotally,
Yeah.
anecdotally, then I guess it's true. From what I understand, it worked, but I don't have anybody
Right. Yeah.
sitting here.
Yeah.
I have never had anybody say Aunt Wim removed my wart. No, but I've never had anybody say that. I have no proof that it happened. I've heard that she was good at it, but I don't know. I mean,
Who'd you hear
I
that
guess
from? Who'd you hear that from?
within my inside the immediate family.
And would there be any motivation for them to lie about such a strange talent?
I don't
Or
know. I may have to ask
yeah,
my mom about that again.
yeah.
That's something I could ask my mom about again,
I
and
don't
I could.
understand. You didn't mind, like you had no reservations about the consequences of your aunt's curse. But this wart thing you can't get comfortable with. I don't understand that.
My aunt was a very flawed woman,
Okay.
so that's not. You know, you're asking me to judge the matriarch.
No, I'm not asking you to judge the person. I'm looking at the fruit. I'm looking at the work. I'm sure her heart was good, and I wouldn't suggest that there would be any kind of consequence. I-
I
I'm
just
just
don't know. I don't know, but it goes back.
I think to me it's a safer assumption that your grandmother actually did remove people's warts than it is to assume that your
But
aunt played any role in the death of your stepmother's mother and sister.
well, yeah, yeah, definitely.
It's
But
definitely
I'm
a
just
safer
saying.
assumption because that kind of stuff happens, but that kind of stuff happens, and they were years
Well,
removed. It
warts
was years
disappearing.
removed, but warts don't disappear.
They don't.
Not, I mean, not to the point where one develops a reputation. Like, look, I went to see Aunt Wim, and yeah, my wart went away.
Yeah.
To the point
But
where
see,
she had a reputation. Yeah,
I'll have to ask my mom to clarify that for me.
I think you know enough already.
I
Just
think it
enough.
probably happened.
I think it probably happened.
Yeah.
I think you're scared of the implications for yourself. You don't want to be known as the heir to the
No,
wart
that's
removal
not it. It
wisdom.
just it would bother me. It would bother me more to know that my grandmother dabbled in
Yeah,
that. It's a little side story. You ready for the final little side story?
yeah.
So growing up as a fun thing, um, on the stove, my grandmother, we would make witch's brew.
You're in denial, Cole.
And what witch's brew was Kool-Aid and water, and we'd boil it. And she would let me put different spices in it, but she would definitely, if I wanted to put cayenne in it, she'd be like, no, 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 no. But I could put allspice or nutmeg or like sugar, and it would boil. And then when it cooled down enough, we'd pour it into little cups and we'd sip this concentrated Kool-Aid with nutmeg and cinnamon or allspice, and we would sip witch's brew.
Sounds wonderful.
Oh,
I
it was
bet it was
fantastic.
great. Yeah.
It was
See,
fantastic.
they were different times. Like my grandparents, my mom's parents, he was a pastor. She was a
Mhm.
pastor's daughter. They were very devout in their faith, but they were different times. Like they participated in Halloween, and
Oh yeah.
it wasn't
Listen,
so
my
taboo. Those
church.
kind of things were not as taboo. And my grandmother even like claims to have seen an alien spaceship.
Really?
Yeah, that today you couldn't admit that as a pastor's wife. But
Oh
like,
no.
we're talking about the 40s, the 30s, 40s. No, it's
Mm.
the 40s. Times were different then, and yeah, there weren't
The
all these negative connotations.
the Baptist church I grew up in, we always had a fall festival, but we all dressed up in Halloween costumes. And we had a fundraiser one time, and they at our little Baptist church, they had a drag show.
Wow.
My dad and the other men in the church dressed up as women and walked down a catwalk.
Yeah.
Um,
We can't talk
and
about this, but yeah, that's fantastic.
yeah, it was laid back. We were laid back. I didn't realize, like, because like when I went to LSU, and I said I was Baptist or I grew up Baptist, I didn't realize. I mean, I might as well have said I was Pentecostal
Yeah.
to a lot of those people.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh
Well,
no, no, no,
they're just cultural Catholics down there by and
yeah,
large, right? Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, no, 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 no. We were laid back.
Yeah.
We were laid back because I mean, I didn't hear like hellfire and brimstone sermons, but like whenever I go to my mom's church, about every third time I go, it's a hellfire and brimstone. Accept Jesus as your savior, you're gonna go to hell. Always,
Right.
about every third sermon I go to, it's a whole sermon, hellfire and brimstone.
It almost feels like you're being cursed in that environment, doesn't it?
Actually, I feel unnourished in that environment.
Don't you feel assaulted? Like
No, I don't.
you can feel the ill will of the pastor. It's like you're
I,
gonna burn in hell.
I don't, because to me, I'm sitting there like I'm here for a nugget to like chew on, and you're not giving me a nugget. I want something I can walk away with,
Like, dude,
think
yeah,
about
I've
for the
already
rest
got
of the
my
week.
head around the hell part. Can you just like
Yeah,
give me something
like
more
and
practical?
yeah, and I know it's very important because we want everybody as saved as possible. But do we need to do this once a month? Let's be a little more subtle
Yeah.
with our if you don't accept Jesus, let's maybe save that for the last 10 minutes of every sermon. I don't know, maybe just, add them up,
Yeah.
do instead of doing 30 minutes on the fourth Sunday, let's just do the last 10 minutes of the first three.
Some of the scariest people I've encountered have been pastors, preachers. I wouldn't call them pastors, I would call them preachers. Religious motivational speakers. Yeah,
Yeah, I could believe that.
that's
I
true.
could believe that. I'm sure, yeah. It's
Dude, it's 1:02 a.m. Let's shut it down.
Yeah, well, we've been talking for 10, talking for 3 hours.
That's too long. I'm just gonna post it. I told you I'm not editing or producing any of this. It's just going up. That's the point. This is a chinwag. Do chinwags last this long?
You know they do.
And why do they call them chinwags?
Because you're sitting here talking and your chin's going up and down.
Chewing the fat. Colgill,
Yes, sir.
thanks, buddy. My inaugural, my inaugural chinwag series guest. Next, we'll talk about the '80s.
Yes, we'll talk about the 80s. We'll talk about Jim Cotta.
Fantastic. If it weren't so late, I would want to watch that tonight. The guy with
No,
his tongue
this
cut
is
out.
what we need to do. This is what we need to do. I need to find it. If we can't find it, I'll download it. And then what we'll do is that if I have to send you a USB through the mail, then we'll start it at the same time, and we'll have Jim Cotta playing in the background as
We'll
we
do a
talk.
screen share. All right. That's actually a great idea. Well,
Yeah,
that will be the underscore of our '80s episode, Jim Cotta. Okay.
yeah.
All right.
I
Perfect.
found it and watched it one time, or watched most of it. I think I didn't watch the whole thing, but I did find it.
Yeah. I remember when it came
And
on TV.
you also have to find the picture of you doing the karate kick in air
Oh, I
when
got
you're
that right
like,
here. I've got that right here.
no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't believe you remember that. Hold on.
Well, I had.
This is me in my Jim Cotta phase, man. Check this out.
Yeah,
Jim Cotta. I was
dude,
like,
I had a picture just.
immediately after watching Jim Cotta, I'm like ripping the shirt off. I'm ready to kick some butt.
Oh yeah, 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 dude. I had the same thing. I had the same picture of me doing the kick in the air, but I just don't have the photo anymore. But I had one. I had one just like that,
My
and that's
brother.
why I remember it.
Yeah. My brother took that picture for me. That's one of the nicer things he ever did for me. I had the disposable camera, you know. I was like, Darren, will you take my picture while I do this awesome karate kick? Here it
He's like,
is.
all right.
Feast your eyes,
Yes.
Jim
Yes.
Cotta.
Jim Carter. Yeah, I will try to find that and download it.
All right, I'll find it. It's got to be streaming somewhere. It's probably on
I doubt that
Tubi or
greatly, but
Pluto or
okay.
something. YouTube. It'll be cut up on YouTube at least. All right, buddy. It's been awesome.
Always.
How was it 3 hours? And that doesn't even count the first hour we cut out.
I
All right.
know.
I'm sorry to keep you up so late. You got baseball in the morning?
A basketball, he has basketball, but dude, I'm not. No, it's summer vacation. I'm not doing anything.
All right. Love you, bro.
You too, buddy.
Night.
Bye.